digital enhancement rather than digital transformation is probably what we need to create a more patient-centric experience. How do our patients engage with our pharmacy on a digital level as well as on a personal level? That's going to be the challenge for us, and how we get that hybrid model right.
As part of our Business Outlook 2022, I'm delighted to be joined by Cheema. Kiran is Managing Director of family-owned Allcures plc, a group of 32 pharmacies operating across the south of England. Kiran himself is a corporate lawyer by profession, but rejoined the family business in 2014 to spearhead its strategy of development. Thanks for joining us, Kiran.
Thank you for having us.
Probably the good place to start on the interview will be just to discuss the pandemic, the continued impact of the pandemic over 2021. As we know, pharmacy is the only primary care sector to have remained open throughout the whole of the pandemic. And I just wondered how that has impacted your business and your thoughts on that across the sector.
It's obviously been a tough time for most businesses and industries, and perhaps even tougher for pharmacy in that we've been open, as you mentioned. So the pressures on us have been slightly different. Pressures for the branches to stay open, for staff to remain safe. Early on, there was issues with getting hold of PPE equipment, and again that were distributed across the group, and that sort of filtered through. Lack of testing early on, which caused some confusion about how we spread that policy across the group. But I suppose operationally, most of our teams have really stood up and stood up to the challenge. They've gone above and beyond to get the patients the medication they need on time. Delivery service has been expanded, and we've sort of stood up really, and especially when GPs and many other health services have been closed. Pharmacies have stepped into that gap, and I think very notably in the press as well has been acknowledged that actually we've demonstrated a huge amount of support and outreach for our patients when they needed it most.
Talking to a number of operators, and this is probably becoming more of an issue more recently with the new Omicron variant, we're seeing a number of our clients suggesting that they're starting to see challenges around staffing of their pharmacies, particularly with qualified staff, pharmacy staff, etc. Partly due to the pandemic, partly due to them having to self-isolate, but partly due to some pharmacists opting to go and work for PCNs. Is this something you've seen as a challenge?
Finding good pharmacists, retaining them, giving them opportunity for career progression in the industry is being hampered by lots of opportunities, whether they're short-term or long-term, in PCN networks and GP surgeries. So I think this sort of emergency style locum arrangements will become less and less opportunistic in terms of rates. I think for our industry, it's sort of a good learning curve, opportunity for us as business operators to learn about how we retain staff, and that could be a cultural fit, and how we change and shape our organizations. Just in the same way that many other industries face droughts of good talent, they will have to change how they operate and how they engage with their staff. And actually, one thing that we're trying to do in our own company is look at actually how we engage with our pharmacists and managers more, so that we can find out what they want from their careers and how we can develop them. And that's more of a cultural transformation. And I think there's a lot to learn from lots of other industries about how we develop that side of our HR strategy going forward. So whilst it is a concern, we're doing all we can to sort of create a pipeline legacy through our staffing programs and training to ensure that we have continuity and staff engagement going forward into the future.
One of the noticeable announcements last year was to do with the advance funding that was provided to pharmacy in 2020. As we know, £370 million worth of funding was provided to pharmacy, but it was clearly signposted that was likely to be repaid at some stage in the future. Now that came last year. with repayment starting in October, coupled with the ability for pharmacy operators to reclaim their COVID costs. I just wondered how that sat with you, and whether you have any thoughts about that across the wider sector and your own business.
I think that £370 million into the sector came at the right time for us. It was used effectively to buy stock and give us some breathing room in terms of resourcing and providing additional services to our patients during that early difficult time. I think a lot of the obstacles and a lot of the issues that we face in our sector is around communication with the NHS, and we're often told too late about how these funds are going to be reclaimed or would be reclaimed. So that left the sector in a lot of uncertainty. So certainly with regards to funding and growth and all the things that we wanted to do, a lot of that those programs were put on stop last year and early this year because we just didn't know what was happening with the reclaim of that money. It was heartening to see that some of those COVID funds were able to be retained, and we certainly were able to quickly mobilise our finance team to sort of get a true picture of what that looked like for our business, and it was a fairly sizable chunk of the advance money, in its totality. I mean, it's a bit of an issue that we're still seeing monies being pulled out of the system rather than being pushed into the system. I think that's more of a reflection of where we sit in the economy and how it's it should be perceived. I think despite some of the good stuff that we're seeing in the press about pharmacy, there is still a lack of recognition about how much impact we are having. And I think if we could quantify that in a particular way, I'm sure that the paymasters would be more interested about giving us additional funding rather than pulling out of the system. Certainly, there's been lots of sound bites from the Health Minister Sajid Javid recently about pharmacy first and how that looks like to integrate pharmacy into the first port of call in the primary care system. We wait and see whether that's going to reflect in funding or whether there's going to be additional help for us in the near future. But all the sound bites are all good, so we remain optimistic about the next 3 to 5 years in terms of how we're funded, and I think on that basis, we have to sort of keep going and keep innovating.
I think if we look at the market over 2021, despite the continued restrictions that we had in early 2021 across all of us, the market continued to perform really well. Interestingly, from our side of things, we had our busiest year ever. We completed on in excess of 140 pharmacy sales over the course of 2021. But there was also quite a lot of notable activity in the market. We saw a number of operators acquire some significant group opportunities, and we saw private equity come into the market. And I just wondered what your view on that was in terms of further entrance to the market, how that affects you in perhaps your strategy for expanding Allcures as well.
I mean, it's good that you guys have had a successful year, because it means that there's good stock on the market if we were interested in firstly growing our portfolio. I'm also aware that premiums and pharmacies remain strong, and purchase prices remain solid for pharmacies. So that's good, obviously good for our value of our business and how it's perceived by our investors and lenders and on the financial side. Broadly speaking, it's good that PE are looking in the sector. I think they've got something else to offer the sector rather than the usual kind of owned operator model. Perhaps we'll see some innovation from the PE houses with their additional investment, which will give us some triggers and give us some insights into how pharmacy might evolve and change. I still think that the best owners of pharmacies are pharmacy operators, because they've been through the trenches and they know how pharmacies operate and they know the structures very well. But I think where pharmacy operators are sort of held back is their ability to drive innovation. And we've discussed this before about how pharmacy operators need to sort of take what they have and try and shift some of the influences away from what they have and change the paradigms in which they work in. And maybe private equity will provide alternative models for us to piggyback off. And there's always the digital transformation side. I think most pharmacies have a website, or they look to do some element of digital interfacing with their patient base. That, I believe, will be certainly one of the big points that comes out of the next 3 to 5 years is how we best use digital to enhance our offering rather than distract from it. And I think that's going to be an interesting conversation to be had in the sector as well.
That ties in nicely with my next point, Kiran. If you look over the course of the pandemic, we've seen a rapid increase in the amount of dispensing activity some of the principal online pharmacy platforms have undertaken. I just wondered what your view was on that, and how bricks and mortar pharmacy can challenge that in protecting its own dispensing activity.
The key things really is that face-to-face interaction. I think we've been open throughout. GPs have been closed. Many other healthcare services have been closed. Patients value a face-to-face service. I certainly think that we need to change our model in that we need to become a services industry, and I think there's sort of more of a growth towards that. I think it's no longer a great opportunity for a pharmacist to go and essentially just dispense and dispense prescriptions. I think the model has to change. I think we have to position ourselves as professionals on the high street, and that's a cultural shift that will take time. Where we stepped up in the pandemic is very much offering larger delivery services. We doubled our deliveries during that period, so we were able to shift and be agile during that period and enhance that service. So I think on the whole, our patients, there was very little leakage to the online businesses. Not to say that there isn't a need for a form of online prescription delivery services, whether it's one of the big players or the small players or locally, because it provides the customer with more convenience. And if we start thinking of as convenience as the big subject matter, arguably the high street pharmacy with a delivery van and what we can offer is an enormously convenient service. There are certainly things that we can do to be more convenient, and I think actually digital enhancement rather than digital transformation is probably what we need to create a more patient-centric experience. How do our patients engage with our pharmacy on a digital level as well as on a personal level? That's going to be the challenge for us, and how we get that hybrid model right. But I think actually there's opportunity there for our sector to develop that side of it in a more concerted way.
It's interesting, isn't it? If you look around some of the country regions, there's been support and investment from regional government into encouraging pharmacy to embrace technology, etc. So I think it's something where there is an opportunity for pharmacy to actually, as you say, enhance the patient experience. Is there anything you've been doing more recently, or have you got plans for more automation or technology or apps to make that experience more convenient?
Yeah, I mean, we will certainly develop our online platforms, whether they are a national platform, whether they're local platforms. I think there's a lot of value in having local platforms. If you're the most local pharmacy in your area and are providing the best, most convenient service in your area, the patients will come, and their patients will stay with you and remain sticky with you. So I think that's going to be really, really important. In terms of technology, we enhanced technology very early on. So we brought in robotics in the shape of a dispensing robot, which helps us with our compliance aids and dotted boxes, MDS trays. So we started that a few years ago and have centralized a number of branches into a hub, into our head office. So we dispense those centrally with a team there, and that creates some capacity for our pharmacists to go and see our patients more and develop that side of it. If I'm honest with you, it creates another work stream, but so it's not the solution for everyone. And actually, given the fact that COVID has meant that we see a lot more prescription volume over the last couple of years, has meant that actually our pharmacists are still busy with the dispensing model and workflow themselves. I think going into the next couple of years, we will look at how we can create more capacity in our pharmacy sites so that our pharmacists can be more available to our patients, and whether that's off-site visits to our patients or care homes, or we have to be slightly more mobile, and by being more mobile, we're more present in our high streets and in our communities. So if we can create capacity and mobilize our staff a bit more, that will be a great PR win for us in terms of remaining in the face of our patients regularly.
I suppose another talking point over the course of 2021 and becoming increasingly more so with obviously the COP26 event at the back end of last year is environment and climate change. And I just wondered how you see that impacting on the sector, what the sector can do to support that. I know there's various initiatives that the sector has been looking at, but I just wonder what your thoughts were on that, and whether you see that as a developing piece as we go forward in 2022.
It's a priority for us, certainly. We hope to have all our delivery vans electric by 2023, so giving us a couple of years to sort of transform that out. We've currently ordered 2 electric vans, and we're trialing those and seeing the range of those, and we're quite pleased with the way that they're working locally. And there are not only savings to be made, but also obviously the benefits of the environmental changes there. More broadly, wastage in our branches. We're trying to incentivize our staff with bonus schemes and bits and pieces to actually focus on what they're using and what they're wasting in our branches, whether it's to do with paper or plastic or basically even when they have their lunches, how can we encourage them to use their less plastic in their bottles, or use recyclable materials when they have their lunches. So it's an evolving piece. I think we're sort of late to the game, almost. Pharmacy is a little bit late to the game normally, but certainly will be a large part of our transformation over the next 3 to 5 years is going to be around creating a greener environment for us to work in, and I think actually, if we can encourage all of our staff and therefore our patients to engage with that service, those kind of initiatives, then we will touch a lot of bases in our communities if we can start developing that. And there's opportunities there for pharmacy to be quite a strong vocal point for that message. So yeah, certainly a priority for us, and we'll keep sort of developing initiatives as we go along.
I think, from our point of view and talking to a lot of operators, there does seem to be reason for optimism in the sector. I know it's been challenging, and a very challenging couple of years, but out of that we've seen pharmacy businesses grow, and people have taken opportunity to develop their businesses. So from Christie & Co.'s point of view, we look forward to confidence at the pharmacy market. I just wonder, from an operator perspective, what your view is and what your strategy is like to be over 2022 and years following that.
Absolutely, we're cautiously optimistic. As always, we're an optimistic company. We would like to develop lots of different ideas and actually take those forward now. And now we've got sort of some breathing space, hopefully, after various COVID surges, to actually start developing in our business and how do we develop our people, particularly after 2 years of really being on the front line. How do we get our staff to reset their minds, re-energize themselves into becoming better teams, or more productive teams? It's going to be a challenge. How we do that as leaders is really up to us. But I think the main goal for us is to really develop the people side of it, and engagement with our staff, engagement with their managers, to retain them and train them to make sure that they stay with our company, so that we can give some continuity to our patients. I think it starts with our people, and only once we get our people right, then we can get the patient service right. So I think that's going to be the real focal point for us in the next 12 months. After that, what happens with growth and innovation is really determined by our funding and how that sort of comes out. But we remain optimistic that we've got some great PR at the moment in the press. If we can keep that going, if we can keep those messages as positive as we can, then certainly there's a positive light in the tunnel.
just one final point, Kieran. We just talking about obviously the continued support for the pandemic. Obviously, we've seen a massive increase in the vaccination program and booster campaign over recent months, more so in December as a result of the Omicron variant. I just wonder what your thoughts were there. Do you see that a lot of people think that should continue for some time and we'll end up with annual booster vaccinations, etc. Is that something that you're looking at from a business? Have you been involved with that yet, or are you looking to do more of that?
Yeah, we've currently got 4 smaller sites doing COVID vaccination clinics, and we can see the opportunity there for us to sort of step up as a sector to sort of deliver those vaccines on a more regular basis. We're best placed to do it as well because we're on the high street and we can more than often than not can provide the vaccination without a booking or on a walk-in basis. So we think it's a great opportunity for us. I think it will be a national service next year. I think it will be a 6-monthly, if not by annual service for us to deliver. I think it'll be rolled out more widely, just like the flu vaccination will be. As the NHS develops, it's sort of trying to live with COVID in a particular way, and I think the way that the government particularly is developing their policies is around the booster vaccination. So certainly pharmacy will feature as part of that, and I think loosening of regulation around pharmacy entry into those vaccination clinics is a good sign that we will probably see a lot more of those clinics on the high street and pharmacies.
Thanks very much for that, Kieran. As always, it's been fantastic talking to you.
Thank you.
Interesting views on the market, and really thank you very much and wish you all the best for 2022.
Thank you, appreciate that. Thank you, you too.